Chapter 4 Rooftop Magic. Jimmy pulled the coat and boots over his pajamas. Santa complimented his choice of Lone Ranger apparel and tucked a new blanket around Jimmy's mother as she slept. It looked very warm and was decorated with silver snowflakes atop a cobalt blue background. When they turned to go, no one noticed them in the slightest. "Nurse Amy won't find me missing and be worried, will she?" Santa smiled. "Oh no, but you do bring up a very good point." He stopped and looked above the doors leading out of the ward to a large white clock. "Let's slow things down a bit, shall we?" Santa retrieved a small silver pocket watch from his coat. He turned it in his hands and flipped open the glass face. With one careful touch of his mitten, a shower of green and gold lights erupted from the timepiece. They hovered about like tiny fairies, then raced up and into the clock on the wall. Jimmy stared in wonder as the second hand crawled to a stop. "I think that should do it," Santa said. "You stopped time?" Santa chuckled. "Oh no, I can't stop time," he replied. "But I am exceptionally good at slowing it down. You see?" Jimmy looked back at the clock for a moment and was surprised to see the second hand was still moving, albeit now in a very slow and very sluggish manner. "So no, I don't stop time, but I can ask it to do favors for me on occasion. Shall we be on our way?" Jimmy nodded and the two continued on. The hallway outside the children's ward was dim, but Santa held his pocket watch aloft and it began to emit a cool blue light. It was just bright enough to see by. "A gift from the elves," Santa said when he noticed Jimmy staring again. "Does it do anything else?" Jimmy asked. "Well, it plays quite a few melodies. It comes up with new ones on an almost weekly basis. I think it's something of a composer. The elves never cease to amaze me." "Wow," Santa chuckled. "I heard it singing off in the cupboard one night, but I can't seem to convince it to do so again. Maybe it's stubborn, or perhaps it's just shy. I'm not sure why, though, as the voice I heard was quite lovely," he said, more to the timepiece than to Jimmy. The trip up to the roof was easier on Jimmy than he imagined it would be. For a while now, the simple act of walking across the ward was enough to leave him breathless and aching, not to mention coughing and choking for a time. But tonight he felt as if he could have raced up 1,000 stairs, then down and back up again. The feelings put a cheerful skip in his stride and a genuine grin on his cheeks. When they reached the door leading to the roof, Santa pushed it aside, and a sizable drift of snow moved. Jimmy followed close behind. "Let me know if you start to get chilly," Santa said. Jimmy was about to answer when he noticed the snowflakes around them were not moving. They simply hung motionless in midair. "It does look pretty when you slow old Father Time, doesn't it?" Santa said. Jimmy nodded and reached out to pluck one of the snowflakes from the air. The tiny crystals were cold to the touch, but refused to melt. "They look like glass," he said, and held the tiny ornament to his eye. "They certainly do. You know they taste like vanilla when they're like this," Santa said. "Vanilla? Why?" "I have never been able to solve that particular riddle," Santa replied. "All I know is that when I slow time, they practically stop melting. And they taste like, well, they taste like vanilla. Try one." Jimmy began to laugh and placed the snowflake on his tongue. To his surprise, it tasted exactly like vanilla, a sweet candy-like flavor. "Wow." "I like to add them to my cocoa as I fly," Santa said. "They don't melt straight away, and they don't chill the cocoa, but they do add a nice spice. They are strange little constructs when they're like this." Jimmy rolled the snowflake around on his tongue and smiled. "Watch this," Santa said, and scooped a handful of the flakes from the air. He worked them for a moment and molded a small Christmas tree out of the crystals. He finished his sculpture by giving it a tiny blow. The snowflake tree twisted and sparkled in his hand for a moment, and Santa left it spinning in mid-air. Pretty, isn't it? Jimmy clapped. Well, let's go then. We have quite a distance to cover tonight, Santa said, and continued to trudge through the snow. In his wake, he left a great round tunnel through the suspended flakes. A moment later, the two stepped around a large brick chimney, and there stood Santa's sleigh behind 8 magnificent reindeer. Jimmy gasped at the wonderful sight. Each reindeer turned, looked from Santa to Jimmy, and bowed their heads low.